Hello and welcome back to the kitchen. It's the 4th of February today, and as you're probably aware, I've taken a break from filming and cooking for a couple of months now. I just had to focus on my health for a little bit. Now I'm back. To ease myself back into cooking, I just wanted something that was relatively low energy relative to the other stuff that I'm known for doing. And I just wanted to do something nice and simple, fairly quick-ish. One of my patrons very kindly bought me a new cookbook. So this is the Bad Manners brand, and this is Brave New Meal. I've got a few of their cookbooks. They used to be called Thug Kitchen, but then renamed themselves. I tend not to necessarily cook from cookbooks, but I like reading them and getting inspired because it kicks off all sorts of different ideas. Now I came across their recipe for jackfruit, I think it's pronounced pupusa. I've done a little Google just to find out a bit more information about the pupusa, and they're typically from El Salvador or Guatemala. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing those okay. They're a small, stuffed, sort of flatbread type thing. If you're familiar with keema naans, like the Indian flatbread that's stuffed with lamb mince, it's a similar principle to that, I think. I've never eaten them myself. Unfortunately, Latin American cuisine's not really made it up north properly. So it's one of those cuisines that I'm dying to see more of up here, but yeah. A bit slow on the uptake so far. Their pupusas are stuffed with jackfruit and beans, but I want to do a breakfast one. I'm going to make up a tofu scramble, and then I've got some kind of bacon bits. So I'm going to do like a breakfast kind of pupusa, and then I'm planning on sticking some in the freezer, and then I can just pull those out, defrost them, and bake them quickly in the air fryer for breakfast. Winner! The most important ingredient in a pupusa is masa harina flour. This is made in a similar way to hominy, I believe. So it's corn soaked in a solution of water and calcium hydrochloride. If I'm wrong, I will correct myself. And then that's sort of soaked in for a while and then ground down, then dried and milled into a flour. This is what they make tortillas with. Now tortillas have got that very distinct taste. So I don't know if you're going to be able to substitute it for like polenta or grits or anything like that. I mean, it'll probably work, but it won't have the same flavour. So if you can get it, it's worth looking out for this. I picked this bag up from Amazon, so it's available, you can get it. You might just not see it in your supermarket kind of thing, depending on where in the world you live. I'm going to start off by making filling. So I'm going to fry off some bacon pieces. I really like the Vivera brand, if you can find them. It's got really, really good flavour, and the texture is just like bacon. Like I fed it to my dad and he thought it was bacon, but it's not. I'm just going to put these in a pan, fry them off in oil for a little bit. So I've got a little bit of sunflower oil in the pan, and then I'm just going to bring that up to heat and then drop the pieces in. Just keep moving them around the pan so they can cook evenly. I'm going to finely slice a couple of banana shallots. You can use an onion as well, that's fine. I've just had these lurking in the drawer since I made those pickles. Which is months ago, and they've lasted fine. I'll stick the link to that recipe down there in the description box for you if you're interested in how to do some lacto fermentation. So I'm just going to cut the bottoms off, slice them in half down the middle. I'm just pulling off that outer layer of skin. Feel free to cut both ends off at the same time, but I leave that one on because then I've got something to hold on to at the end. Finally slice it. Everything in a dish ready to go into the tofu scramble later. Bacon needs a few minutes in the pan, just until it starts getting a little bit of colour. It's more for mouthfeel, sort of texture, than it is for, you know, cooking it for safety or anything. So you want little bits of browning on there. And then I'm just going to put the bacon into a little bowl, just so it can cool down a touch. I've got a 450 gram block of extra firm tofu. This is the type that comes, it's in the fridge, and it comes in like a bag full of liquid. So I'm just going to squeeze some of the liquid out. So I'm just going to slice a little bit of the packet off and then tip the liquid out. Because this is going to be fried, I'm not going to bother pressing it or anything, because the liquid will just cook out in the pan. Just put that on there, sort of cut end up so a bit more can drain out. I'm going to put a bit more oil in the pan and fry off the shallots. Once the oil's warm, pop in the shallots. I'm just going to fry those for a couple of minutes. They won't need long because they're quite small. I'm just breaking up the slivers a little bit, separating them. Once the shallots have got a bit of colour on them and starting to go translucent, it's time to start adding in the tofu. So that's the block of it that I've got. So this one's got a really dense, firm texture. It's really nice. I'm just going to tear a chunk and then just crumble that in. Doing this on a medium heat, medium high. My stove goes up to 9, I've got it on a 6. going to give that a stir so the onions don't burn, and then just repeat that until everything's all broken down. You can break the lumps down even further with a fork or even a potato masher. Just be mindful of doing that in a non-stick pan, because if you put metal in, you can scratch it. So that's all of the tofu in there now. So I'm just going to cook that down. Got a few leaves of kale and chard in here that I've been growing in the Smart Garden, so I'm going to pop some of those in. I'll stick the link to the Click and Grow Smart Garden video that I did if you want to see how the units work. But yeah, it's sort of provoked a bit of a love of growing things. I've only got 2 chard leaves that are big enough to eat at the moment, but I really love the colour on this. It's beautiful dark green on the leaf, and then the stem, it's this gorgeous red, and then on this one, got a yellow stem. This is a Bright Lights variety. And then I've got the green kale here. So I've just stacked it all into a bunch, and then I'll finely slice it. To make things taste a bit eggy without having to use eggs, you can use black salt. So this is salt that's got a really high sulfur content. So it smells very eggy, as well as being salty. This is great if you grind it and then put it on avocado. It's just like a boiled egg. Very bizarre, great little snack. The type I've got is very coarse, so I'm going to put in about a teaspoon or so into the pestle and mortar, and whatever I don't use I'll just put back in the jar. So I've got the salt in the pestle and mortar, so I'm just going to give that a quick smashing up. Definitely use a bigger pan. Because this is going everywhere. I've ground that down quite fine, so I'll just sprinkle that in when needed. I'm going to start adding some flavourings in there now. Tofu is a very bland product, which means it will soak up lots of flavour really well. So you can see it's got a bit of colour on in places. Tofu doesn't need to be cooked as such. You're fine to just eat it straight out the packet. I'm just going to break down any massive pieces, just to make it easier to then stuff the pupusa. Liberal amount of black pepper. 1/4 teaspoon of onion granules, 1/4 teaspoon of garlic granules, and then just for a touch of colour, I'm going to use a tiny amount of turmeric. Turmeric has got a flavour though, so just be careful that you don't use too much. So it's like 1/8 of a teaspoon maybe. 1/4 teaspoon of the black salt for now, and then I can always add a bit more in later. Check the flavour, see if I want anything else in there. I'm going to put a bit more garlic and onion in there. This is going to be very sort of personal preference, whatever you like. Get it tasting how you want it to. Quite dry, quite a crumbly texture at this stage. I'm just going to add in a couple of tablespoons of plant milk, just to lubricate it a little bit. Add in the leaves. Just let them cook out for a couple of minutes. The sun is bouncing right off my neighbour's window, so apologies for the squinting. I think I'm looking at you. I'm just going to chop the bacon down a little bit, just so it's not quite so big pieces. I'm just chopping through the bacon just to get into slightly smaller pieces. So there we go. Fairly evenly mixed. Final check, see if there's anything else I want in. Onto the dough itself. The recipe's in cups, so I'm going to try and convert it as I go along into grams and mils for you as well. I'll try and get this shot for you without tipping it everywhere. Here's the masa harina, so you can see it's a very light flour. I'm going to sieve it as well just to get rid of any lumps. 4 cups of the masa, that's around 560 grams. 2 teaspoons of salt, and then sieve that together. So the masa it's very floury, as you'd expect, but it's slightly, ever so slightly gritty, so it's not quite as fine as like a wheat flour would be. So I'm just giving it a quick stir with a dough hook, just to combine the masa and the salt. And I'll push a little well in the middle that I'll then pour the liquid into. 2 tablespoons of oil. I'm using sunflower oil again. Feel free to use whatever you want. Then I'm going to add in 2 3/4 cups of cold water. So I'll pour half or so. And then give that a good mix in. Need all of that, stick it in. And I'll go in with my hands. So it feels a bit like a pastry dough, I suppose, rather than a bread dough. So just keep lifting it up, make sure you get all the stuff off the bottom. Squidge it around. Might tip it onto the counter. I'm kneading it to make sure there's no dry parts, but because it's gluten-free, it's not going to have the elasticity that a wheat flour dough would. So all you're looking for is to not have all these little bits. The recipe says it needs to hold together like Play-Doh. So I think we're probably there, because these bits are not really dry, they're just crumbly. Transferring the scramble mixture into a bowl, just because I'm going to use this pan to fry the pupusas. Then just give the pan a quick wipe. I'm going to set up a bit of a production line sort of thing. So I'm thinking if I make 3, start those frying, and then I can be making them as they're frying, because I'll need, I think, like 3-4 minutes each side. Put a bit more oil in the pan. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in a small dish. Not much, just a little bit. Pour a bit of water into that, and then I'm going to use that to keep my hands wet as I'm shaping them. Now I'm fully anticipating that the first few are going to be terrible because I've never made this before, so you can laugh at me, feel free. I'm going to get my hands a bit wet, and I'm taking a chunk of dough about the size of a golf ball, thereabouts. Make sure it's nice and compact, and then press that. It's very crumbly, maybe it needs a bit more water. I'm just wetting the dough ball a little bit because it is very brittle. It's sort of crumbling as I try and shape it. I'm hoping a little bit more water and a tiny bit of oil, I suppose. Just hoping that's going to help it stay together. That's better, so I'm not getting such massive cracks around it. So we want to flatten it out. I've got it into sort of a flat layer, and then I'm going to put a spoonful of the filling in. Don't overfill it though, because you won't be able to close it again. And then we need to sort of fold the dough over the filling. Like that. And then flatten it out again a little bit. Any cracks that appear, just fill it in with a bit of extra dough. And just make sure everything's nice and encased, so there's no huge splits like that. Smooth it off. Yeah, pop that on the plate. Got 3 done, so I think I'll get 4 in a pan. I'm just going to start the pan warming up. I think the trick for the dough that I'm noticing, when I take it out of the bowl, it feels grainy, but then as I mix more water in, it feels more silky. So you want to be able to squidge it without it just crumbling apart. I think that's a better texture. This is probably, you know, a nice little task to do if you've got time, if you've got kids and you're looking for something to occupy their time with. Yeah, set up a little production line. I'm just gonna make sure everything's covered in oil in the pan. You can even get a brush in there and just make sure everything's nice and covered. Slide in the little pupusas. And I'll let them fry 2 to 4 minutes until it's golden, and I'll keep making them up as they're in the pan. Just giving the pan a little shake every now and then just so they don't stick. These have had a couple of minutes in the pan. Let's have a look, see what the bottom's doing. I'm just gonna slide underneath. Yeah, so it's starting to colour, just needs a bit more. Yeah, I think probably 4 minutes in total each side. These have had another couple of minutes. Let's check. I can always flip them back over. Now I'm going to ever so slightly push down on them. So I had my timer on at 4 minutes and 30. Let's have a look. Yes, it needs a couple more minutes. So I did turn the heat down because I noticed it was going very dark in places, and it's, you know, you need all of it to colour sort of evenly. These have had another 2 minutes. Let's have a look. And we could probably do with a little bit more colour. I'll pop them back in for another 2. These are taking way longer than I thought they were gonna. Let's check on the bottom again. So they're not getting masses of more colour. But it looks, I think that looks okay actually. All right. I'm discovering when you mix the water in, when you first squeeze it, the outside's kind of soft and then there are harder parts in the middle. But if you just keep squeezing it, you'll feel it starting to soften up and be kind of silky, and then when you squeeze it, it doesn't drop to bits so much, whereas that, it's just very powdery. So yeah, it does feel more elastic. The second batch that's in the pan, When I first put them in raw, I kind of pressed it down lightly, just so it would, you know, every part was covered. And that seems to have given an even, you know, more even finish. And then now that I've flipped them, I'm just pressing down again, just to get them nice and even. So as I'm putting new ones in, I'm kind of pushing it down a little bit, just to get it nice and flat. So I'm going to get all of these cooked and I'll see you back for the eating. It's time to eat. I've really missed this part. Well, I've missed all of it, but especially this part. Here's my amazing plate of pupusas. The texture of it, when I kind of squeeze it, it's got a little bit of bounce to it. So yeah, I think that's going to be delicious. I'm going to chomp. That's really good. So that filling tastes like eggs and bacon. And then that flour has got that really distinctive taste that a tortilla has. Ooh. I mean, it's much more work than I thought it was going to be, naively, but it's kind of worth it. I made a bit of a dip, just tomato ketchup and a bit of chipotle Tabasco. So I'm dunk it in there. I just thought, why not, you know, lean into the breakfast flavors. Delicious. I'm really happy they actually worked, because at one point I thought, oh, what if it's raw in the middle, or, you know, what if the dough hadn't cooked evenly? But no, that's really good. I'm going to put them in a Tupperware tub and just keep them in the fridge for a couple of days, and then if I've still got loads left, I'll start deciding when to freeze them. I'll freeze them 3, maybe 4 to a portion, perhaps pop a little square of greaseproof paper just so they don't stick to each other. And then if I remember to take them out the night before, I'll just defrost them in the fridge and then put them in the air fryer for, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes just to reheat them. And then from frozen, probably 10-15 minutes, again in the air fryer. We can do them in the oven. Might want to wrap it in foil just to stop it drying out. The brand of bacon that I used has got gluten in, but apart from that, everything's gluten-free. So that's just a great, tasty little snack. It has got a really nice chew in your back teeth, but it's not, it breaks down quickly, you know, so you're not, I don't know, for hours, you know, but it's got a nice couple of seconds or a good chew, and then it just breaks down really nicely, and it's lovely and soft and tender. I imagine these could be filled with anything, as long as it's not too big pieces, because it's just going to make it awkward to shape it and then fry it evenly. I'm wondering if this would work as a way of using up leftovers. So if you'd made like a stew or a casserole, that kind of thing. If it's very liquid, perhaps mash down some kidney beans or cannellini beans, just to get a bit of body, you know, and then mix that into the stew, just so it's kind of, you know, it'll sit in a blob rather than just running off your hand. You could also do things like the original recipe used like a spicy jackfruit kind of mixture, that would work, or bean chili, maybe hummus, that would be maybe nice in there with some crunchy bits, perhaps maybe some chopped peppers, corn, that sort of thing. I think they'd be especially delicious with some smoked vegan cheese in there, like the Applewood brand that you can get, because that melts real nicely. So when you break it open, it's going to have all the stringy, cheesy goodness. I'd thought about doing cheese in these, but I just wanted to kind of keep it minimal. But yeah, next time I'll definitely stick, you know, perhaps when I'm shaping the ball, maybe put a little square of the cheese at the bottom and then start building it around that. I put another kind of 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of extra water in per dough ball, which probably equates to then an extra 1/4 or 1/2 cup of water into the whole mix. You'll have noticed when I put the initial lot of water in, it looked, now that I think back, it did look quite granular. But because it was holding its shape, I sort of was like, all right, that's enough. But it wasn't. Maybe do 3 cups of water, give it a really good squidge between your fingers. And if it feels grainy, just add a little bit more water and just keep mixing it in, or do it the way I did it and just, you know, add water into each ball individually. Whichever way. If you've made it all the way to this point, I just want to say thank you for coming back and indulging me in my shenanigans in the kitchen. If you like your food full of flavour and portable, hit subscribe, tap the bell icon, and check out this.